There is a stage when he has to observe, look at things, understand the end user, understand what to create, conceptualize. When he's looking at a lot of ideas and he's prioritizing what is the idea that he wants to take forward, and then he will prototype, or he or she will prototype, test, and improve the solution. And so there are only 3 stages of design. And quite interestingly, these are the same 3 stages that were taught to us in 3rd standard as scientific process, if most of us remember that. To observe, to create an hypothesis, do the experiment, and test it out. So we were taught the same thing, and design is nothing different, but it's a empathy-based scientific process, nothing more than that, where you bring in the human element and understand what will be desirable. So the question here to the audience would be, what you think is the most important superpower out of the 3? If you have to pick one superpower, which will be the most important?
Sir, I think the creativity is the most basic thing that a designer needs. Like, for understanding user and beautifying it, we need a spark in it. So I believe creativity is the basic thing.
Design thinking is a discipline. It's not a process where you have like 5 tools कि हाँ आपने empathy mapping कर लिया, आपने stakeholder mapping कर लिया, तो design thinking हो गया. It's not that. It is a discipline of understanding the user, ideating code together, thinking of a solution holistically, and prototyping it. So it is that journey which you need to take care of. It is not something which is exactly कि हमने मैंने 4 process और tool set डाल करके मैंने design thinking कर दिया. No, it's not a tick in the box. When you talk about problem solving, okay, approach to problem solving. How do you approach problem solving? Problem solving cannot be, so yes, he was user centric. He understood the empathy. He in fact tried it on himself to understand the empathy. But most importantly, if you look at it, it had to be a win-win situation. He had to co-create the product because he realized that just creating the product alone won't help. He has to look at distribution. He has to look at how the product reaches the end customer. He has to look at how it is created and sold in the way that it creates awareness. So he looked at the problem holistically. Right, and he thought of it as an entrepreneur, where it was a win-win situation for the person using it, for the person manufacturing it, and the community manufacturing it. So when you're looking at a problem, it is not just one perspective. You can't create a solution which will impact the environment, because tomorrow it will come back and hit you. Right? You can't create a solution which is going to be beneficial for one set while destroying the business. For example, Uber का आपने negative example बोला ना अभी कि हमने ये create कर दिया, उसमें ऑटो वालों को problem हुई. ऑटो वालों को problem इसलिए हुई because they were not ready to adopt to the ecosystem, right? But today the same auto walas are using Rapido. So this guy, if you look at the story of him, he had not gone and listened to a design thinking lecture from somebody like me or somebody did not come to his class and teach. He was a 10th grad. But look at the story. Whatever he did in that story was absolutely textbook design thinking. He understood the user. He understood the problem of the user. He understood the real challenge of the user. He actually tested and tried to empathize with the problem himself. Co-created a solution, looked at it from an entrepreneurial way of expanding, and was constantly iterating to improve. Design thinking में इससे ज़्यादा कुछ नहीं cover होता है. So this is any innovator's natural process. Actually speaking, it's like जो आपको एक मारवाड़ी businessman can teach you on a shop is what you learn in an MBA. It's the same thing, right? Any designer and innovator has the same process. Design thinking only structures it and puts it in a way across to you that you have to look at all these parameters. If you're not being empathic to the people, you're not going to be desirable, and it brings it back to the same point, the problem between invention and innovation. So you can be inventive, you can be creative as much as you want. If it doesn't hit the market, if it doesn't hit the society, if it doesn't hit your target audience, if your target audience does not imbibe it, So what we say is we take the circle, which is understanding customer, understanding business, and understanding technology together. And the way I look at this ecosystem is you should, as a designer, merge the three circles. So, and it is an innovator's mindset. As I said, you have to constantly keep evolving. So the same three steps of your journey, you have to constantly keep doing it. When you're looking at understanding the user, ideating, prototyping, वो एक बार solution आया, feedback आया, फिर से वापस जाओ, फिर से understand करो कि क्यों वो feedback आया. Keep doing it. That is why you always will. Design is always going to be an iterative process. Varna all those big unicorns today would not have a constant design team. But there is a design team with all the unicorns because there is always a scope to improve your product. So again, you have to start and keep doing it in a user-centric fashion. So what we say is we take the circle, which is understanding customer, understanding business, and understanding technology together. And the way I look at this ecosystem is you should, as a designer, merge the three circles. So while you are absolutely customer centric at the heart of it, you also will need to learn how to understand technology and what is the impact of technology. Most of us designers, we think that we are creative people and we don't need to understand technology. We are making a mistake on ourselves, because what is happening is the technology allows you to do something things differently, and if you can imbibe it, the solution becomes even better. So understand what is, I'm not telling you to learn blockchain or understand blockchain or understand any of these technologies, AI, but you need to understand what is the possibility of an AI, what can possibly happen in the experience of an end user if you use the new technology, right? So if you, for example, a fashion designer needs to understand what is the latest happening in terms of technology, in terms of fashion textile, tech textile, right? The tech textile is changing the way fashion is going to be in the future. And if you can imbibe that, it is going to be great. So if your solution can be customer centric, future ready, and purpose driven, which is the overall, how does this solution align to the overall brand's vision? Because suppose if you're sitting in any brand and tomorrow when you're working in companies, right, whatever you create has to align with the overall vision of the brand, overall requirement or overall big picture that the brand wants to achieve. Otherwise your solution will never be accepted. Because if you want to do something which the brand does not want to go in the direction of, there will be a conflict, और तुम बोलोगे कि यार मुझे नहीं समझते ऑफिस में लोग, you know. So that is a picture that can only happen when you are not aligning your purposes to the overall purpose or the overall vision of the brand, or in case of customers, your customers' brand, because most of you will be designing for your customers. So it's also important to imbibe that. I mean, everybody sells bike, right? Harley also sells bike, TVS also sells bike, your Hero also sells bike. Why is a different emotion for different bikes? Fashion, everybody sells the same clothes to me. एक शर्ट और एक पैंट ही बेचेंगे ना मुझे, उससे ज्यादा तो कुछ बेचेंगे नहीं. But the emotion of walking into a diesel is very different from an emotion of walking into a Fabrinia to an emotion of walking into a H&M or a Zara or any other shop. Why? It is purely because of the value system, right? It is about the brand's vision. It's about the softer aspects. So each of these brands are customer centric in their own way. They have understood their customer in their own way. Each of these brands are looking at the future and talking about sustainable fabric and things like that in their own way. But overall solution and overall experience of the brand ties up to the vision of the brand. And that is why each one of them are different and each one of them are accepted differently. And in the technical words, this is what it is called. So when you have customer centric, it is the UX aspect of it. Then you move on to the larger aspect when you marry the customer centric. I mean, in the industry, when you are able to marry customer centricity and technology, typically the industry understands it as customer experience or CX professionals. And the world gradually is moving from CX to BX, and probably you might have heard Azmina on the calls on the sessions before, and she is somebody who champions on the outer layer, right? So the reason why this is happening is, and I don't know if Azmina can come on the screen and talk about it a little bit, but the idea of understanding brand is equally important as you understand people and as you understand technology. Azmina, you want to talk?
No, Nimesh, I would say you continue with the flow. You continue with
Okay.
That's a different subject altogether.
Yeah. So it's important that all these three are interlinked. उसको silos में मत देखो, कभी नहीं होगा. So while you are getting your expertise in one thing, you need to look at the next and next, and eventually acquire the three layers of
And I would just say the culmination of the all three would turn into service design.
Yes.
Yeah? The culmination of BX, CX, and UX turns into service design.
Absolutely.
Sir.
Absolutely.
Yeah, service design, we did a session, right? And we spoke about what service design entails, right? So I would just say that brand experience, customer experience, user experience, when you culminate all of that, it is the holistic service design.
Somebody had a question over here.
सर मेरा क्वेश्चन था, जैसे मैं UX UI का स्टूडेंट हूँ और मेरे को बहुत अच्छे इंटरफेसेस डिजाइन करना आते हैं और मतलब सोच लेता हूँ, तो फिर अभी मैं UX वाले पार्ट में हूँ, लेकिन अगर मैं उसको अपने स्किल्स को टेक्नोलॉजी एडवांस भी लाऊं कि मेरे को वो समझ आ जाए कि क्या कोडिंग के लिए भी पॉसिबल है, क्या चीज कोड हो सकती है, तो फिर मैं क्या CX डिजाइनर बन जाऊंगा?
नहीं, आपको उसके लिए टेक्नोलॉजी करने की जरूरत नहीं. You don't have to be a coder. You have to be able to understand the possibility of technology. Like for example, as UX designer, if you are creating a solution today, right? कि हम give me a challenge. Like for example, you are saying how a shopkeeper, how the fashion designer will sell the product in the market. ठीक है? So your earlier colleague who was a fashion designer has created a range and you want to sell it in the market. Now, as UX designer, you would know that there is something called artificial intelligence which will track if my buyer has been buying certain kind of clothes in a certain fashion. Then I can suggest my next kind of trends or next kind of design language can be aspired from that. If I can put my sourcing for my friend on a blockchain, I'll know that if she's saying this is an Chinese silk or an Egyptian cotton, we can track it that it is an Egyptian cotton. इसके लिए तुम्हें blockchain समझने की जरूरत नहीं है. But तुम्हें ये समझना चाहिए कि you don't have to create a blockchain, but as a CX designer, you are expected to understand the best of technology and what they do, so that when you are creating your story and your journey, right, you are able to imbibe and think about the possibilities of using that technology in a different way for yourself. आज के डेट में
डेजिग्नेशंस भी नहीं है, कि मैं UX डिजाइनर हूँ, मैं CX डिजाइनर हूँ, मैं BX डिजाइनर हूँ. ऐसे मार्केट में कोई डेजिग्नेशंस नहीं है.
जैसे आज के डेट में आ रहा है, वैसे बात अलग है.
I know, ऐसे कंपनीज आर राइटिंग एंड यूजिंग डिफरेंट टर्मिनोलॉजीज, बट आई वुड जस्ट से कि एक UX डिजाइनर कभी कंप्लीट नहीं हो सकता अगर वो CX के बारे में ना सोचे. और जो एक CX कभी एक UX कभी कंप्लीट नहीं होगा अगर वो BX के बारे में भी ना सोचे.
Absolutely, you have to think of the brand that you're creating.
You have to think about the larger view, where you have to see the whole picture and then come down and narrow down on your expertise.
Absolutely. For example, आज के डेट में Shark Tank is the vogue. So what is difference in भारत पे ने ऐसा क्या किया जिसके कारण अश्विन ग्रोवर इतना पैसे वाला बन गया? It's very simple, ना? He changed the way micro funding happens, the loan process happens. But he took it from a journey of the shopkeeper saying that कि भैया मैं तुमको कोई पैसे नहीं चार्ज करूंगा, तुम मेरा कोड यूज करो, मैं तुम्हें 10 महीने के लिए ट्रैक करूंगा तुम्हारे बाइंग और तुम्हारे बिजनेस को. उसके बाद बेस्ड ऑन दैट I'll create an algorithm which will give you money based on understanding how much is your credit worthiness without taking your bank account papers and give you an instant credit as a microfinance. That is his model, right? So he did not design the technology or the AI, but he managed to put together the journey of how it will happen. So as UX designer, you're supposed to understand the impact of technology and manage to put together the journey. That's it. Any other questions?
No, sir.
So very quickly, there are 6 processes. I mean, that is what I say that anybody should follow in order to do a great design thinking exercise or use design thinking in the way of design development. Firstly, understand the purpose. The purpose is usually a bigger thing than what you think it is. So it is not about creating the next MP3 player. It is about creating an experience of music. That is what I wanted. Or it is, as Nike would say, that bring inspiration, innovation to everybody. They don't say that I'm going to make the next shoe. नहीं, जूता इज अ बाई प्रोडक्ट. आज जूता बना रहे हैं, कल को वो ऐप बनाएंगे, फिटबिट बनाएंगे, कुछ भी बना सकते हैं. As far as the solution is inspiring you to be an athlete, they are doing their job. So understand the purpose very clearly. Define the purpose before you take any design exercise. So when a brief is given to you, even as a fashion designer or a product designer or as a UX designer, you need to understand why are you doing what you're doing before you jump into designing what is the solution. So understand why you are doing what you're doing, right? Understand who it is for, and time and again, who it is for is a very important exercise where you don't just understand the person and what they are functionally doing or functionally needing, but it is also important for you to understand culture. Like for example, this is the example on the top which you're seeing is of it's called iodine bindi or life-saving bindi. So in Jaipur or in Rajasthan, what happened was they realized that the women were having iodine deficiency. अब उन्होंने उनको iodine के tablets दी, किसी ने नहीं खाया. So what did they is they created a bindi which would have iodine which will infuse iodine into their body, right? So that was a customer experience. It was taking a product and creating an experience which was desirable by the customer. अगर तुम उसको किसी भी तरीके से और तरीके से देते तो शायद वो consume नहीं होता. Right? Similarly, the Cambodian iron fish, which is to solve the deficiency of iron, they would put iron fish into the meal and ask people to stare it while they're making the food so that the iron gets diffused. So it's about understanding the customer, understanding the cultural expectation of the customer, understanding the functional expectation of the customer, understanding the emotional expectation of the customer, and solving it.
So actually, I have a doubt.
Yes, bolo.
You told 6 process, and when you were telling the definition of the design thing, it's not a process. I'm just getting
6
confused.
P's. Okay, so it is not a
so process is not a right word here, I think.
Process, 6 phases of design thinking. It's not process. 6 P's are 6 phases of design thinking. Now
you can process, just say 6 steps also, you know.
6 steps. प्रोसेस अगर मैं बोलूं कि तुमको यहाँ पर तुमको सिर्फ पर्सोना बनाने का है, नहीं, जरूरी नहीं है सिर्फ पर्सोना बनाओ. तुम जाके यूजर रिसर्च भी कर सकते हो, यूजर इंटरव्यूज करोगे, you can do ethnographic research, you can do a persona. Ideally you should create a persona, but if you're not doing a persona, what else can you do in order to understand the person you're designing for? So define the persona, define the purpose. These are 6 steps. I didn't say the 6 P's of the process. I mean the 6 principles of the process. I didn't say this is the 6 P process. ठीक है. When I say process, what happens ना, Vanshika, what happens Vanshika is people start taking tools कि मेरे को ना पहले ये करने का है, दूसरा है मेरे को स्टेकहोल्डर. जरूरी नहीं है कि आपको वही चीज करने का, आपको ये 6 स्टेप पास करने हैं, आप उसको किसी भी तरीके से पास करिए, right? Promise. It's also important to define what you want to create by the end of it. If you don't have a very clear vision of what your solution is. When Nano started, they did not know what Nano would look like. Tata had created a promise that I'll create a car in 1 lakh, and that is what was the brief given to the designers. He didn't tell them कि तुम ये करो, तुम वो करो, तुम ऐसे करो ताकि 1 लाख में गाड़ी बने. नहीं. He just gave them a promise that we will create a car in 1 lakh, under 1 lakh. And that is the promise as designers we'll need to create before we start designing our exercise, as to what my end user will feel, or what my end user will do, or how my end user's experience will be when I finish my exercise. Then you look at possibilities, how you can create a solution, whether you can take the shampoo and put it on a sachet so that many people can use it, whatever it is, right? You have multiple ways of reaching out to the same solution. Then you look at possibilities of how you're doing it. What happens in design fraternity is we immediately brief आया, फटाफट हाउ में घुसो, ठीक है, कि कैसे बनाएंगे इसको. Doesn't work. Go with the first 2 first, right? आप पहले पर्पस डिफाइन करो, किसके लिए बना रहे हो उसको डिफाइन करो, क्या and prototype. I mean, that is the last P, which is something that each one of us need to do. Whatever your idea is, you quickly prototype it. The sooner you prototype, the sooner your feedback happens, better your solution will be. I know when we are design students, we feel कि यार ये हमारे प्रोफेसर बार-बार बुला के हमें क्रेडिट क्यों दे रहे हैं? Trust me, when you go out in the brutal world outside, the crits will be even more brutal and the changes will be even more brutal. So trust me, be ready for it, because you will have to be in a constant iteration mode. And that is what, because the markets are evolving. Your solution may hold good today, tomorrow it will not hold good. So you have to constantly prototype your idea and check what is working and what is not working. The rest of them are thinking कि they know the end user. When you think that, अब जिस दिन आपको ये लग गया ना कि मुझे पता है कि मेरे end user को क्या चाहिए, उस दिन आप फेल कर जाओगे एज ए डिजाइनर.
इट्स वेरी सिंपल. अगर आपको पूरा प्रोसेस का टाइम भी नहीं मिलता है, अगर आप वो 3 चीज याद रखोगे, डिजायरेबिलिटी, फिजिबिलिटी एंड वायबिलिटी, अगर ये 3 वेन डायग्राम्स भी अगर आप याद रखोगे, अगर आपके पास बहुत छोटा प्रोजेक्ट और बहुत कम टाइम है, एटलीस्ट वो 3 स्टेप्स करना तो बहुत जरूरी है.
I think there is no certain answer to a question ki how much time does it take to finish a project or a design. It's a evolving process. Like Nimesh will understand, because Nimesh, fortunately, I also got a chance to work with Future Retail, and I was the first experienced designer to design FBB. So the design process didn't finish.
That is why I thought I knew somewhere. Yes. Okay.
Yeah. So design project didn't finish, until unless I see the reaction of people shopping in that area, and there was still an opportunity to redesign the experience.
Absolutely. So in Future Group, for example, it is still a practice that the store manager goes and sees what the shopkeeper is buying, or the shopper is buying. It's called the basket survey. And they're supposed to do 3 basket surveys every week. They're supposed to talk to 1 or 2 customers every week. No matter how much fire is there in their office, you have to do that. Because till the time you don't do that, how will you know about what is the solution that you're going to bring on the board? And it is constantly evolving. उसी के कारण में आज के डेट में you have other outlets that has come up of the same group. No? I mean, food hall is is an outcome of that kind of a thing, that where we realize that, hey, these are the different kind of customer, these are the different kind of customer. You don't need to mix apples and oranges together.
Yeah. To market their products in a more easy way, so that the customers can buy the products from the local market rather than going to Max and H&M.
ठीक है. कितने लोकल प्रोड्यूसर्स से बात किया आपने जिनका लोकल मार्केट में प्रोडक्ट बिक रहा है?
So 3 to 4. We didn't have too much of time, so we had to restrict our research for that. But I understand the primary research that we have to go directly and ask take the data. How do we get the secondary data?
See, understand something. आपका अगर आप रिसर्च करने के 2 तरीके होते हैं. एक तो आप क्वेश्चनर लेके जाओ, which is validation, where you already have an idea, you want to validate an idea. Yes, no, how much, number, ye wo. When you are doing qualitative research, that is when insight happens.
Thank you, Nimesh. Those were very, very insightful thoughts. Thank you, Azmeena, man. You always been, such a great sport, bringing your thoughts on the table for students. Thank you, everyone.